Hello, everyone. You have tuned in to the Python Pulse live stream every second Friday of the month. This time, 11 a.m. Pacific. It is 2 p.m. where I am on the East Coast. I'm your host, Dawn Wages. I'm the Python community advocate here at Microsoft, and I'm so excited to bring you another episode. I say this every month. I mean this every month. And it's also been a while since I've seen you because I had the excellent hosts, Sarah Kaiser and Pamela Fox, who are just consummate professionals and just fantastic coworkers who hosted while I was getting married last month. So I'm back and I'm really excited today. And I see a bunch of you all joining and filtering in. Put in the chat things you love about Python, why you're here, where you heard about us from, and just like general hellos on where you're from. So if this is your first time, welcome. And if you're coming back, welcome, friends. Make sure you sound off in the chat, as I mentioned. And the goal is to keep this whole thing interactive. We have a really chill episode with Soojin. It's always chill when Soojin rolls in, talking about data science. And we're going to start with some announcements. Then we'll go to a really cool VS Code VS Code profile to help you follow along. And then we're going to get like straight into it. And hopefully you get some ideas and some things and some questions about data science for Soojin, because we're just going to keep rapping with the audience. So short announcements today. I don't know if you've all heard, I'm particularly excited about it. Python is now in Excel. It's currently available for preview, so you can transform your data analytics with Python in Excel by using Python libraries to clean up, explore, analyze your data right within a familiar Excel environment. I'm hype. I started my tech career as a marketing analyst. I was in Excel and business objects and things like that all the time. I was also a SQL analyst for a little bit, scary days. I'm really excited about this feature. If you all get to try it, please let me know. You can @ me at Bajoran Engineer on X Twitter thing. I'm also on Mastodon at Bajoran Engineer, Mastodon .social. So yeah, let me know if you're doing it. I'm really particularly excited about the conversations on Python and Excel. I'm also hosting a Python and VS Code Django also workshop on October 8th. It is completely online. If you want to figure out how to find the tickets, you can go to djangocon.us. It will be through DjangoCon US. I'm a fan of the conference. You can also find the link in the show notes. I hope to see some of the people there. And I hope to get some more people who are not usually DjangoCon audience just to join, because it's completely online. Join for the workshop. And you should be able to walk away with VS Code profiles and dev containers that suit your workflow. I'm not going to give you some cookie cutter solutions. It's going to be interactive working with your solutions. Also, we have AZD 1.2.0 out. The Azure Developer CLI is an open source command line tool that accelerates the time it takes for you to take your application from local development to an environment in the cloud. We also have the Azure SDK for Python that now supports vector search. Vector is a method of searching for information within various data types, including image, audio, text, video, and more. I learned a lot about vector search yesterday because we had a full day of Azure, cloud, and Python conversations. And if you're really excited to join in on that conversation, all the videos are out. Go to the Azure Developers channel, check out all those videos. It was really, really a fantastic day yesterday. Also, a new month, a new VS Code release. The September release notes actually just dropped on the Python dev blog right before we got on stream. So they're hot off the press. We have the Python create environment command. We have a shout out to a community contributor. You could get shout outs too if you want to contribute as well, to Eeyore Lee for the YAPF formatter extension. I got to check that out. I'm not familiar with it. And would love more community contributions. So you can get a shout out in the release notes as well. All right, let's jump in. Can we bring Soojin on?
Hello.
My friend, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm doing better now that I get to see you. It's a good day when I get to hang out with Soojin.
Always good day with you.
Cool. Well, we could jump into it. I'd love to start out by sharing your VS Code profile. What do you use? We could talk through it. And for those who are interested in following along with VS Code profiles, they're in the show notes. So I supplied one that Soojin showed me. This one may be a little bit different, maybe the same, but we're gonna talk all flavors of profiles.
Yeah, completely. I'm not just going to talk about profiles, actually.
Yes.
I will be talking about all sorts of data science tooling features and other tidbits within VS Code. So if you have any questions on those, please leave them in the comments.
Cool.
This is more of a discussion kind of session today. So like Dawn mentioned, it's supposed to be chill today. It's not an end-to-end, like, oh, here's a project from like start to the finish. Like, we're not going to do that. It's going to be more like, you ask me questions, I'll answer them, that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Anyways, I'll talk about profiles. But before I talk about profiles, I kind of wanted to mention like 3 different things. So profiles, extension packs, and def containers. Those are the 3 kind of things that I think people mention a lot. And I mentioned these 3 things when we talk about profiles because these are all different ways of setting up your development workspace and also sharing that with your colleagues, teammates, or even your students if you have, if you work at a college or whatnot, Coursera, whatever, right? And I see these as kind of tools that augment the solutions that already exist to the problem of, oh, that works on my machine. Like that happened a lot. And I think there's a lot of great solutions out there, right? Like Docker, it helps things like development environment management, app containerization, all of that. But then these 3 things, I see them as something that are a little bit closer to your skin, right? So that actually affects the look and feel for your day-to-day development experiences.
Okay.
If you already know what these 3 things are, and that's great. I'll talk through them and you let me know if they what I say agrees to what you think.
Okay.
And you can totally let me know. And for folks who are joining in, right, like just let me know if you think that's not right, or like if you use this for some other purposes. I would love to know as well. Anyways,
awesome. I'm excited to start out the episode talking about profiles too, if you want to, because I'm trying to start this habit at the beginning of each of our episodes. We share a profile that kind of maps with what we're talking about, but we're also just gonna go into all of the data science things that we have planned too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Cool.
So let me share my screen here. And excuse me for looking at the other screen here. So this is my demo profile. So when I demo to, virtually, a lot of the times I have to zoom in a whole lot. And when I type, I want to make sure that people can see what I type. I want this to be as clean as possible. So this is really my demo profile. And when I say profile, there are 3 different components to profiles, right? So if you go to the gear icon on the bottom left of VS Code and go to profiles, there's an option that says show profile contents. Um, and it takes a long time because and so settings is essentially your VS Code settings, right? So whatever you have when you go to your settings, your user settings within VS Code, anything that you that gets saved to as part of your profile. And the other thing is UI state. Now this one is saved in a file called global state.json. And this one, I actually never go in here and edit whatever is in here. But essentially, it captures whatever you have laid out in your profile, in your UI state. So let's say that I don't want to show the left side panel here, and I just want it to be all code. It saves that directly in the file and automatically updates it pretty much. And then there's all the extensions that you have installed on VS Code for this particular profile. For me, I have very minimal extensions installed for my demo because I don't want anything to kind of clutter up while I'm demoing things. But for my default one that I have a lot more extensions, and I am a light theme user. Guilty. So usually I do light theme, but I got yelled at too much by the audience, blinding them. So now I do dark mode for demos. Yeah, and cool thing about profile is that you can actually export them and share them with your colleagues if you want to, right? So if you click on the export, there's 2 ways that you can share it. One is local files. So when you save it, it'll actually save as your code-profile profile file. Or you can actually export it. Oops. What happened? You can export it as a gist as well. So if you have connected to GitHub already, then it'll save as gist so that you can just share that link, and then and whoever wants to import it can just easily import it by going to profiles again and then import profile. I do see a question. Is it possible to store UI state in def container.json? I believe you cannot. I believe that you can only do UI state within profiles as of now. The def container is only for user settings, extensions, and not UI state, but def container features or templates that you include in the def container. All right, cool. Lots and lots of Pythons. Love it, Sarah. And I think a cool thing about profile also is that when I was a student, right, like I wish I had this because not sometimes, all of the time, my school computers were a lot better than my own laptop. Bigger screens, better, CPU, all of that, just better spec all around. But then my VS Code setting would be just completely different, and I just didn't like how it was so different when I used it. And then when I go to my school computer, it's like, the blue and white, boring, I don't know,
Yep.
VS Code. So if you actually turn on setting sync, right, my setting sync is on. So if you turn on your setting sync and you sign into VS Code, then what it does is it actually saves your profiles across different machines. So as long as you sign into VS Code, you can use whatever profiles you want to. And totally. I know it's kind of convoluted right now to get here. When you say import profile, we actually have a few profiles that we created for you, and it comes out of the box from VS Code as well. So you could, like I said, let's say that somebody exported a file for you and then you wanted to import that directly, like you like the way your teacher does something and you just want to have that. You can do that if you want. But we also have different profile templates that you can take advantage of for different workflows. So yeah, that's what profiles are.
Awesome.
Any questions so far?
I love to start my profiles either from that Python one, or I'll start it from one that I call default because it
Mhm,
has my auto save on. I love that. And I always forget when I create a new profile to turn that on. And a
mhm.
couple of the other little fiddly settings that I like forget to change. So I'll have a default and then I'll do a net new from the default and then I'll make it specifically for this project or that project.
Yeah, exactly. I think I don't really vary my profiles per project, but I do vary it per, like, if I'm doing data science versus Python, like for me that's a little
Mm,
bit different. So
okay.
yeah, so that's kind of how I view profile. I view profile as something deeply personal, actually.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I know you can share it and it's super easy to share, but for the most part, I think profile I'd use it for myself for
Cool.
the most part.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you. That's great.
yeah, and then I'll just like quickly compare it to extension packs, right? Like,
Okay.
because that one also, I think I get a lot of question on, like, okay, well, then why do you have extension packs if you have
Yep.
profiles? Um, so extension packs, for those of you who don't know, probably not, but let me just explain quickly, are just collection of extensions, usually for a specific workflow, right? Tricky thing about extension packs is that they don't always discern themselves as extension packs in the VS Code marketplace. So let me go to the marketplace here. If you go to the VS Code marketplace, and I'll zoom in, and scroll down, you can see collection of extension packs, right? None, a lot of these, maybe none of these, have the name extension pack in there. Oh, this
Mhm.
one maybe Laravel. Um, so you can see that a lot of these, like, they don't even mention that they're extension packs, right? Like, who knew that Jupyter extension is actually an extension pack, right? Um, Maybe you knew. I didn't know in the first place.
I
When we
know
actually
because
go
I
into
follow you, so I feel like I'm a little bit ahead of the game.
if if you go to the Jupyter repo, for example, like I'll go here, and if you look at the package.json file for an extension, which for VS Code extensions, they all have package.json that kind of describes what the extension is, right? You can see that it's an extension pack, which, so the Jupyter extension is one where it comes with its own features and tools already. So we have code for the Jupyter extension, the core extension itself already, but then we also have these different extension that are managed just differently because of the repo structure. So we don't, like, there's no separate team that works on key mapping for Jupyter or like output render for Jupyter. We don't have separate team for that within, like, internally. But these are just, it's just better managed that way for us to kind of keep these separately. And some of these, like the slideshow and the cell text, we can talk about these later, but these ones are a little bit more experimental and they're not quite ready to be in the core Jupyter extension yet, which is why
Mhm.
we have it as part of the extension pack as well. And so this kind of, like, essentially this is the cookbook for saying, hey, like, when somebody installs the Jupyter extension, make sure to install these other extensions as well. And I think I saw a question, but I think I missed it. I
Sarah's
think
giving
some
some
parts.
clarification on a couple of things that might exist in the dev containers.json for UI state. Okay.
I see, I see. Okay, cool, awesome. Cool. Yeah. And then extensions are extension packs, just like extensions
Hmm.
alone, are published as VSX files. And you can use the docs. It's really easy to get started with building your first extension. I think a lot of folks have come on here and talked about that, so I'm not going to talk about it. But yeah, this one is specific to VS Code as well, just like profiles. But it is something that has a little bit broader reach, I would say, than profiles. I don't see extension packs as something deeply personal at all. um, and so if you want to kind of publish a set of things, I think this is the one that I would go to. Or even like within the company, I know some companies, they don't ever publish it, but they have a V6 file that they share within their team. Right? And so like if you want to do something like that where you have a bunch of extensions that you just want everybody to use, or like you recommend people to use, you can do that as well with that publishing.
Excellent note. That's a
Mhm.
really great note.
Yeah. Um, Curious about dev containers, or should I not?
Let's hear from the chat. How are we feeling about dev containers? What's the alternative? Should we do dev containers, or what could be next in the agenda otherwise?
So we could talk about AZD templates. We could talk about the Sidekick, um, what is it, extensions that I was talking about earlier. We can talk about working remotely in Jupyter.
Okay.
We can talk
So
about
can you sign
Copilot.
off
Yeah.
on the chat and say either dev containers, Scikit, or working remotely in tunnels,
hmm or Copilot.
or Copilot? Oh, right. I think we got a question on
Somebody
dev
did ask.
containers. Let's start with there.
Yes. Okay. So while people put that in, purpose of dev containers. So dev containers are, um, they're essentially, we see them as self-contained, kind of shareable like units of installation code. So if
Hmm.
you're familiar with Python, right? Like I think of them as like, it's so bad to say it this way, and if people who are working on it are gonna be mad at me for saying this, but I see this as like Python virtual environments on steroid, right? So it's like you can add you can add a lot of different features like or libraries or a set of things like that, within the dev container, and I use them like a containerized, development, environment. But there's also things that you can add that are a little bit outside of the realm of, you know, management, like CLI tools, right? Like AZD feature, right? Like you can add that into your dev container, um, uh,
Yes.
or even, yeah. So it's I think for me, like if I have a data science project that isn't specifically just Python, but it includes both Python and R, which I know a lot of people do as well. Like that's like one of the reasons why I would kind of recommend using dev container, and you can also share that like really easily, right?
Yep.
And for me, dev container is different from the two that I talked about earlier because it is more repo based. So what the cookbook for dev container, which is all contained in a dev container folder, lives within a repository, like within a code base. So whenever you open up that code base, you can take advantage of whatever is already in there. And so that's kind of how I see dev containers,
Yep.
versus the other two.
So the dev container.json and the .dev container directory makes it that you can commit to your GitHub repo and things like that, make it a lot more shareable. Okay, that's a really great point. Also, one of the things that I like to say is that if you are familiar with Docker, for example, as a container application, what's under the hood is really a Docker environment, and what you technically need on your machine for it to work. I, there, you could correct me if I'm wrong if there's other ways beyond that, because I usually have Docker desktop on my machine, but I have Docker desktop on my machine. And when I like spin up a dev container, I can open up Docker desktop on my machine and even see the one that
Yep.
VS Code has created for me. So I
Yes.
think that's a really cool one. And it like lets me peek under the hood and kind of figure
Yep.
out what's actually happening there. Not
Yep.
necessarily
Exactly.
magic, but it seems like it because it's easy.
It is, yeah, yeah. I would say that there is a higher learning curve to using dev containers and the other like extension packs or profiles. Maybe those are a little bit like straightforward compared to dev containers, but it does offer a lot of free. And I honestly think like if you have just basic knowledge of Docker or containers, like it'll get you far with dev containers. Like that experience is not as hard as you might think.
And Docker does feel like magic sometimes if it's obscuring some of the tough stuff or the things I don't really feel like fiddling with. And it's all and these Docker images are stored and listed on an image registry. So if I pick the image that I'd like, it feels like magic. It spins it up. It spins up exactly what someone else has specified for me. We have a question about working remotely in SSH tunnels. This looks like a vote on one of the topics too.
Sure.
Want to jump
Yeah,
into this one?
absolutely.
Cool.
So if you are, not working by yourself and like as a side project, right? Like if you work at some company or college or what have you, usually there's some computational resource that's available to you, which much better compute memory than your own machine, right? Um,
Yep.
and so I know a lot of people want to take advantage of those remote resources. And I think, like you mentioned here, SSH is probably the one that you're most familiar with. Um, but you don't necessarily have to use SSH in VS Code if you don't like to get rid of like the set of tools that you have to use within your own computer while you're working with um, remote servers and remote tunnels. So I'll kind of talk about two different ways, right? Uh, Actually, maybe I can talk about getting started. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Um, Getting started experience with kernels, right? So something that's different in VS Code, as opposed to the classic Jupyter experience, is that when you want to turn on Jupyter Notebook, right, for like just the regular like good old Jupyter Classic experience, you go to the terminal and you type something like Jupyter Notebook, and then it gives you some URL. You click on it, and then it pops up in your browser. I think that's like the way that a lot of people work with Jupyter Notebook.
Mm-hmm.
For VS Code, you don't necessarily need to do that. You actually just open up your notebook, like your IPyMB file first, and then you go to a kernel selector, which actually automatically detects all the kernels that are available to you within your machine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is not all of them. There's more Python environment that I have here. I have definitely cleaned up, so I feel very proud of it. But
Yay! Good for you. I
um,
have not cleaned out mine. Mine's
yeah,
nuts.
I'm very proud. I want to keep it this way. Um, anyway, so yeah, like so, all you have to do is go to kernel. This is what we call the kernel selector. And there's different kernel source that you can connect to, like Python, the different Python environments you can use as a Jupyter kernel.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this existing Jupyter server button that allows you to connect to a remote kernel. And so this is the one that I would actually recommend using. You would just need to go here, which says enter the URL of a running Jupyter server. As
Mm-hmm.
long as your server is, set to be accessed externally via, the URL. This automatically actually paste whatever I have copied. I'm glad I didn't have anything other embarrassing thing copied on here, but um, yeah, as long as it can be accessed externally, and then you set it to listen to all IPs, and I can talk about that, right? Like there's a command when you like first open up Jupyter Notebook. You say like Jupyter Notebook, and usually there's like a dash dash like no browser button, right? Or no browser option, and then there's allow origin, so you can here. Let me just type it into the chat. Oh, actually, I don't have access to the chat. Dang it! Let me do this. And maybe Don, can you help me to put it in the comments there?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, totally.
So that allows you to allows your servers to be accessed externally, and then you can just to be sure make sure to listen to all IPs. So let me add this option as well.
Okay.
And as long as you do that with your whatever notebook that or Jupyter server that you spin up, you should be able to just copy in the URL here with the token too, like whatever token you have, right? Like it'll be some kind of like HTTP. It'll look like your like IP address, and then you have your port, and then you can say like token equals like whatever
Mm,
token. It'll automatically connect you to that server, right? So if you don't have to necessarily like go into the SSH command and like try to connect it that way with the dash L and all of that, right? Like none of that is needed in VS Code. I don't
mm.
think a lot of people are familiar with this method, but I did want to just like point that out, right? And then kind of related to this as well, Jupyter server with working with Jupyter Hub under the hood is a little bit different. And so we noticed that a lot of people who were trying to use Jupyter Hub to connect it remotely this way were failing. And we are so sorry about that. And we're so sorry that we just noticed it. But we are in development of a better way to kind of support Jupyter Hub remote cases as well there. And so that should be hopefully coming soon to you.
Can I
in your
interrupt you for a
nearest VS
moment?
Code.
Because it's one of my
Yes.
favorite things about just working on this team is how we communicate with the community at large. Less of the it's more of the soft stuff, but like when people do have issues or find something, how do they get in touch with the Jupyter Notebook team?
Yeah. So Jupyter Notebook team is we're very much on GitHub. We live on GitHub a lot. So if you go to github.com/Microsoft/VS Code Jupyter, that's our repo. Like you just find our repo from either VS Code Marketplace or on github.com. And then go to the issue section or the discussion section, and we're on there like all the time. I would say almost 24/7 even because we do have a teammate who works in Australia, so it kind of works out where we're kind of doing 24/7. So yeah, we're on there. Just talk to us. I think it's interesting because we see a lot of developers actually communicating and interacting with developers on GitHub issues, but we don't see as many of them in the Jupyter, in like our Jupyter extension. We don't know why. We still haven't been able to figure out why.
Hmm.
Um, so I think honestly, the best way for us to get feedback so far has been like attending these conferences or talking to people in these live streams and getting feedback there, which is unfortunate because we would hope to get some other like async feedback as well through these issues.
Asking you shall we
So
see if we got a good number on this audience. We'll just you keep coming on the Python Pulse. We'll get on Discord. We'll have some other ways, and then we'll just there's gonna be an onslaught of tons of comments now.
no, yeah, please do. Like yeah, nobody's judging. Like if you say I want this like little feature that only I would use, you'll be surprised that a lot of people would also want that too, right? Like it's yeah, just talk to us.
Pamela
I
Fox
love
is prolific with her GitHub contributions and issues and commits, and I just absolutely love it.
yeah, yeah. Love learning in public.
Awesome.
I know a lot of developers are also kind of introverts as well, so it is difficult to get out there publicly, and sometimes I understand. You can so like there is also within VS Code, if you've been using notebooks for some time, we do pop up a little thing at the bottom that says like please take a survey. We do read those a lot too, so if you like go ahead and go there and just to complain anonymously in that survey, that's completely fine too. We love complaints because that like yes, there was some candies too, but if you give us complaints, that's what makes the product better. So
Absolutely.
definitely do
Totally.
that. Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Remote tunnels. I think he also mentioned remote tunnels as well. So let me
Okay.
talk quickly about that one.
Cool.
Code tunnels are think of them like I at least I think of them completely like flip flop of SSH in a way,
Mhm.
right? Like it is kind of SSH, but it's let's say that you have your VS Code on your local machine. Like I have this right here.
Mhm.
And then I want to be able to access what I'm working on here from some other machine. Um, and so maybe it is SSH. I don't know. Don't listen to me. But that's kind of how I see it is having whatever you have already in your local machine available remotely. Whereas
Interesting. Yep.
you have remote thing available locally, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um, but I guess it really depends on the context. It can either be local or remote. Anyways, it's this one is actually so I'm not super duper an expert on this. So Pamela and Sarah, if you're still on, like please like feel free to like chime in the chat, right? Um, what it's super easy because all you need to do to make this what you're working on available is type code tunnel. Um, I didn't try this before I got on here, but so hopefully it doesn't
I love live demos. It just ups the X factor of a live stream. So this is great.
accept server license terms. And so what this will do is it'll, and I should probably, and what I'll do is I'll do this and make sure that I show you that it works, and then I'll shut it off really quick because I should not have this online for people to access.
Yes.
So I'll probably shut it off real quick, but essentially it provides you a link. And
Mhm.
then you can put that in your browser, and because VS Code is available in the browser on VS Code, that VS Code for the web,
Mhm.
you just put it into the browser, and wherever you are, like I like to take my tablet with me, rather than like my laptop nowadays, because my laptop is actually the one I have is pretty big. It's a 17-inch one.
Mm.
I don't want to drag that around.
I
So
get it.
and but it's like it makes it so easy for you to like actually develop and see what you're doing, in the browser wherever you are, even with the tablet, right? So that's kind of what I
Yep.
like to do. Um, and so yeah, it's taking a little bit because I haven't done this on this repo before. So yeah, open
Oh,
this
there
link
we
in your
go.
browser. And this thing popped up, and you should be able to see it kind of come on soon. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's
Okay,
working.
it's working. Like
Now
it's
shut it down.
seriously that easy.
It really was.
You can
Okay,
see
now
that
shut it all
it's
down.
text tractor, and it'll come on here, right? Let me shut
Oh,
that
okay. Yes,
off.
yes, yes. Okay, good.
Don't go on here. Don't go on here. Yes. Shut it off. Cool.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
Okay, cool.
Excellent demo,
No,
though. It was really great.
it was brave.
It was
um
brave. We're brave ones over here. I like it.
yeah, so you can use that as well if you want to. I think that's like another alternative to using remote machines, or SSH. Like if you don't want to like get into any of that stuff, right? Because there's a lot of steps to setting up your SSH and making sure that it works.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of like security like loops to go through if you are in a protected environment, like at work or something like that. But code tunnels, it already has a lot of the security built in, so it's like super easy to use. So I would say that's like my go-to.
Interesting. So do teachers use this in classroom situations? I haven't used code tunnels, wondering about the use cases. I feel like code tunnels is usually when, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you, in your explanation too, Soojin, if you have the powerful machine, your 17-inch that you don't want to have on the go, you can set up the tunnel. So now you have that available. You can walk away, go to the coffee shop with your iPad or your 12-inch machine or 10-inch, whatever iPad. And now you have the power of another machine running somewhere else. Is this correct? And how do you interpret that?
Yeah, I definitely, that's like how I see code tunnels being used. And
Mhm.
also like yeah, for me, I do a lot of just like data science explorations and things like that, like
Okay.
for whatever purposes. And so for me, it's exactly what you said. I don't see this in the classroom setting. Because I mean, which teacher would want to have all their students go on to their their repo, or their workspace, and just, I don't know, give them the opportunity to mess around, right?
Right,
um
right. And so
it
there's some
is
big
security
questions.
through obscurity.
Yes.
Yes, for sure. Security through obscurity, for sure. How are these tunnels hosted? I will post through Dawn docs.
Cool.
Like I said, I'm not the super expert in this area. One of our wonderful, or many of our wonderful PMs and devs who were involved with it have wrote awesome documentation on it. So I will actually put it here. Awesome.
In the tunnel situation, from what I understand, it is hosted on this machine because it is accessing your machine, but it's what is it through? It's being hosted on your machine. Then there's security channels that it's done through, firewall protection and some other things, yes, in the docs. But if you are interested more in hosting space, there's code spaces that more so like you're actually getting Azure Cloud Storage technically
Mhm.
with code spaces instead. And it does kind of a similar instance, but it is all through the browser.
Yep. Yeah. It does utilize Azure, but that is also abstracted
Okay.
away from you.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the service itself is hosted in Azure, but you really like you don't there's no you don't need to sign in or anything like that to use
Hmm.
this. And also from your machine, you
Interesting.
don't have to make any firewall changes from what I know.
Yes.
So yeah,
Okay. From what I know too. Okay. Yes.
yeah,
Okay. Great. So we've
yeah.
talked about profiles, we've talked about extension packs, we've talked about dev containers, we did remote kernels, remote tunnels. We've gone through a lot so far, and we have more that we could possibly talk about. So we had maybe Copilots, AZD templates, and then maybe like some alpha features. What do we think we want to talk about next? Anyone in the chat want to sound off if any of these things sound really cool? I'm excited about Copilot.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. Let's jump into some Copilot.
Click the wrong button here. Yeah, Copilot. So I won't talk about like the nitty gritty Copilot stuff. Maybe I'll talk
Okay.
about some of the new features that we added in because they are more geared towards like notebook use and data science.
Nice.
So I'll do a quick intro of Copilot. There's 3 different components to Copilot. One is I think what most people are familiar with, which is code completion, right? Like it kind of thinks of most likely thing that you would type, and then it would complete your code for you. And then the other thing is something that we call an inline chat.
Hmm.
And so let's say that I select some kind of code, and then I do Control I. It'll pop up this inline chat here, and you can ask, hey, like, read it from the, I don't know, data CSV file or something. That's a really basic one. But and then it'll kind of change the code for you, right? Um, and so I'm going to discard that because that's not true. That's not what I want to do. But
Someone
so we have
mentioned that
that component.
Python users
Yeah,
use Aider over Copilot. Copilot. I've not even heard of Aider before. So that's going to be something I have to look up after this call.
I have not heard of Aider either. Aider, is that a VS Code extension or is that something completely different?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. It'll be great if you could type in there, and then I'd love to know. So let's talk about two. The other one is something called a chat. If I if I zoom out a little bit, it should be on the left side panel because I'm zoomed in. That's why it was kind of
Mm,
hiding there earlier on. But think of this kind of as a chat GPT, but for your code,
okay.
for your workspace. And so we have these kind of built-in slash commands. If you go to type slash, these built-in slash commands where these are the commands that are optimized for a specific intent that you have. And
Cool.
so things like if you want to run tests on some code, or if you want to simplify some code you wrote, like you just write a code without thinking about like, how this syntactically, and then you say, I just want to simplify it. Or
Okay.
fix, right? Like let's say that I have, and this is going to be like a stupid one, but why not? Um, let's say that I run this and I run into some error, which I will, and it's taking a long time, but I will show you that you can. So a lot of the times, when you're not using a notebook and when you're using some Python file or some other file, you can say fix, and then it'll help you kind of fix whatever mistake that I think you made, and try to fix it for you. I also want to show in the notebook how it actually pops up. Here we have a button
Mm,
here. It says fix using Copilot, and that'll automatically
mm.
fix for you.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's just not defined, so
Nice feature.
when I accept it, it's gonna delete it. Yeah.
Right.
And then the new one that I wanted to talk about were these two called Create Workspace and Create Notebook. Um,
Okay.
these are kind of developed together. is kind of what we're thinking about right now is it's more geared towards, I would say, beginners for now. Hopefully we'll make it a little bit more elaborate and hopefully better, but essentially if you don't know kind of where to start, but you want to make a project or make a notebook, do some exploratory data analysis or something like that, you can say, I want to create a notebook like for doing exploratory data analysis on CSV that contains salary information for data science related jobs. And then it will kind of outline, oh, like I think this is kind of the things that you want to do. You want to import some libraries, you want to load the data, to do some cleaning, exploration, visualization, and then we will kind of create a notebook for you and preload some of that, like the Copilot has recommended. Can you hear me? Did I lose you?
Oh, I'm still here. I'm
Okay.
still here. I just didn't want to distract you in the background.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. No, I saw a little thing circling. So anyway, so this is what it does. Honestly, it's okay. It's not the best thing in the world right now. We just released it. It's in the pre-release. And so I think in terms of like what we should include in a notebook, it's there. But in terms of like, um, the different columns and features that it thinks that we have, right? Like it doesn't really know what our CSV actually contains. And so like, some of these code is like really they're fake. Like who knows if my CSV file actually has years of experience. I actually don't even have
Right.
a CSV called salary data. Like I just made that
Okay.
up, right?
Okay. Yep.
And so but it does give you a great start. And I would say like this is where like work like productivity wise, like it's super great. Let's say you're a student and
Definitely.
you want some kind of like skeleton to start with. I think this is great. But we definitely need to improve on this experience. So you actually like, if like anybody on the call on the live stream here, like if you have any ideas of like what would be really, really great, talk to us. Like
Great.
go to the issues and
Call
talk to
to
us.
action. Call to action.
Yes, yes. Big red flashlight. Awesome. And someone did mention a little bit more about Aider, I see here. Utilized.
I'll have to look it up.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. 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 Yeah, I would say that's pretty much it for Copilot for data science right now.
Okay.
Is kind of like scaffolding your project out with some kind of skeleton, and then also like if you want to ask it to make some what is it, like visualization or something like that. For me, I use it a lot. If I already have a data frame loaded, I think this notebook here, I actually a lot of these visualization, I just ask Copilot to write for me.
Cool.
And so
Very,
like
very
you would
cool.
see like this visualization. Yeah, exactly. So it's just it. I think that's kind of how I use Copilot right now for data science.
Word cloud.
More
Oh, I
things
can
are
imagine a
definitely
ton of
in.
uses for that. Yeah, just like pop some data in, and then I just didn't think that I could use that for a presentation. That's brain's already turning on how I'm going to use this. This is good. The 100 level
Yeah,
content's made
yeah,
for me.
yeah. Awesome. Let's see. And while we're on word cloud and presentation, I can talk
Okay.
about the different like alpha or like sidekick extensions as we call it, that you never thought you needed for notebooks. So there's two of them. They actually
Okay.
get installed with Jupyter extension if you do install them. And one of them is called cell tags. So if you open up the command palette and you say cell tag, you can add a tag to your cell. Say like parameters. I think that's one that a lot of people use if you use Papermill, right? If you want to like parameterize your notebook or like execute a particular workflow, this was a huge ask from people who were already using Papermill, and this was, you know, they were able to do this in Jupyter, like the classic experience, but then they weren't able to do this in VS Code because we didn't support tags back before we implemented this. And so this is something that I, you know, that I kind of recommend to people who have been missing that feature. You can add different tags too, like don't show this. Right. And so like you can do like whatever you want, pretty much with like tagging your notebook cells. Kind of related to that as well is our other extension called Slideshow, I believe. And that one is great to use with NB Convert. And I know a lot of people use NB Convert to turn their notebook into like a deck that they can share with people. And so
this is, I've not heard of that one yet. So this is okay. So NB convert. Okay. I'm gonna make my next presentation with Jupyter Notebooks. This is great.
So so you would do something like slide, and you can switch the slide type to either a slide or sub-slide fragment. These are definitely in line with how NB Convert works exactly.
Okay.
And so if you turn any of them into a slide or what have you, essentially it like you can say it's a slide type slide, and then you can create your slides using Notebook. I've already done that before, and then I've exported it, so it's like NB Convert and then export to whatever file type. I've already exported this to an HTML, and I'm not going to show it to you this way. This is stupid, but I've done that before, and I have uploaded this. I remember at one point. Cool. Here, so I have this HTML file. So let me show you. Like, if you go to settings of your repo, and then you go to pages, you know that you can like really quickly deploy whatever page, you know, get a page for your repo, right? And so my site is live here. And then I do, what was the name of that? Explore. Oh my god. Explore data.slides.html. Explore. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
I go here. This like slide was created using NB Convert and using that as well.
All right.
So you will see things like sense. You know, you'll be able to. I mean, it should be prettier. But yeah, this is probably what you're familiar with when you like we're talking to data scientists, right? Like that's kind of how they present their things, or either like PowerPoint, or but I know a lot of folks do this as well.
Definitely.
So, yeah. So that's what it works really well with, I would say.
Cool.
Yeah.
These are great. So you mentioned, and just want to recap some of the stuff that you covered, because these are really cool and I'm learning a lot. I'm sure some other people are learning a lot. So these are installed as soon as you install Jupyter extension.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. And so if we wanted to test them out and give feedback on them, they're ready for that today?
They are. Yeah, they're absolutely ready for that today.
Cool. Okay.
You can put the issues in either like in that specific repo or in the Jupyter main repo. Like it's all the same people working on it. So
yeah. Okay, cool. That's exciting. I'm going to try some of these out. I have like a presentation that I need to run too, and I definitely can use it for, I probably will not be using all of the bells and whistles of Jupyter Notebooks, but I definitely have some Python we could be stepping through. So this is good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. We do have 5-ish more minutes left.
Yeah.
Do you think we have enough time for AZD real quick, or do you want to do some closing stuff?
You want to start a little bit of AZD? We could see what we get to.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. I don't have too much time for it, anyways. I mean, I think you mentioned earlier, like way earlier when you were doing announcements, what AZD was, right? Like they're basically, it's a CLI tool for developers to get easily your apps easily from your local development environment to Azure.
Yep.
And
Friendly commands. I usually say things like think init up pipeline config, and
yep,
you just kind of it'll do the things in the background for you that you could also do yourself, but it'll kind of bundle common commands all together for you.
yep,
Cool.
exactly. Um, and what I wanted to show was, and I don't know if this has been shared already, probably a lot,
Not
but
today, but
you
yeah.
cannot overshare this, which is the AZD templates page. So
Could
it's
you
just a
zoom in just a bit?
yes, absolutely. You can,
Cool.
it's basically a gallery of all the different templates. And this is coming like straight from, the team who works on AZD and AZD templates actually,
Yep.
is that the recommended best practices way of working with AZD and like AZDifying your application is that you start with one of these templates and then you edit as you go, right? Like a lot of these, let me actually go to Jupyter Notebooks because I know there's one for Mercury. Yeah. Um, like this one right here, it is one of the more like I would say like simpler ones where it essentially creates a Azure container app for you
hmm
that you can host your notebook in. If you go to the info code, like there's just so many bicep code that you need to write. And like who's got time to write bicep codes? I don't like I don't even know.
Yep.
you know. And so like that's I think this really helps a lot. And that's why I just wanted to like mention that as part
hmm
of this talk. And like that all you need to know is this like main.bicep file. That this is probably the one that you'll probably touch like the most because it's
Mm.
the entry point for the deployment and includes essentially like the references to the other bicep files in that directory. And think of this as like the recipe to deploying to Azure. But I mean,
And one of the things that I learned
yeah,
yesterday was that that site that you were on before, Awesome
mhm,
AZD, has been
yep,
going so well, and we've gotten so many different amazing tag templates that they're redesigning the site sometime soon. So it organizes those little feature tags a little bit better because the site works so well and people are so excited about these templates.
yeah, these are awesome. I mean, like it's one of those things where like it increases your productivity by like 1,000-fold.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah, and and like if whatever workflow, like if this fits within your workflow, all you need to do is just change your source code, like your like notebook right in here. You just need to change this one up, and then you do AZD init, AZD up, and then it'll just be up for you. I think maybe like you need to just sign into Azure, like maybe that's another command, AZD sign in or something like that is another command, but maybe 3 command, and then you'll be literally like done. And
Cool.
so like yeah, just wanted to mention that one,
If
and
people
that please
want
contribute.
a quick course on it, there's a 30-minute session that Savannah Ostrowski did yesterday with the Azure Day Python, Azure Cloud Python Day. I think I got the words right. But you could go to the Azure Developers channel on YouTube to find all of the videos from yesterday.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Cool. That is it.
Great. This is good. And we're rounding out the end of the hour. This has been so fantastic to talk with you. You could stay on the screen as we say goodbye and we could like wave together, I guess. But it looks like we're just about time. It's really been a blast. And I'm so excited to be able to share the time with you. Thank you all for joining another episode of the Python Pulse. This is a Microsoft podcast. And thank you to our producer, Peggy. I was having technical difficulties this morning, and Peggy was just holding down the fort, as always, is what she does. So, thank you for being pivotal in getting this stream aired every month. And if you just stumbled upon this stream, you can also find us on Twitch or YouTube. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. There's tons of stuff, really great stuff that come out under this VS Code banner. And you get to see all of my really cool colleagues who are doing awesome, awesome things. So Thank you. And you can find us at find the Python for VS Code team on Twitter at Python VS Code. And if you want to chat with us Pythonistas at Microsoft, you can join our Discord, which is aka.ms/Python-Discord, where we hang out and talk all sorts of cool things like building stuff with snakes. So it's been great, y'all. Peace, love, and data. Bye.